Hello everyone, welcome back to Binapani Devlog, the one where we do devlog but in a podcast style. So today we'll be hearing my conversation with Khushi, who was one of the initial front-end developers at Binapani. She is an expert in Angular and she had been shaping our Binapani Academy portal. We'll talk a little bit about Angular today and specifically building libraries in Angular for the community. I will also little bit talk about the NGX Omniview library that we have made in Binapani and just made public that is now available and published in NPM as well as the source code is open sourced. We'll share a little bit behind the scene stories about the development experiences and yeah, we'll chit chat about Angular and stuff. If you are a developer or a software engineer or from the Angular ecosystem, this is right where you should be at. Uh, if not, if you are still interested about hearing the backstories about Binapani, stick around. And without further ado, let's get started. Yeah, good to have you, Khushi, with us today. Let's take some time and discuss about the library that we co-wrote, the Angular library. And yeah, to start with, let's talk a little bit about Angular and maybe a little bit about ourselves. So, Khushi, maybe you could tell a little bit about yourself and your Angular experience to begin with.
Yes. So, thank you all for coming and joining our discussion. So, I'm Khushi and I have more than 3 years of experience in Angular development, especially in the front end. So, I have developed various different projects in my past companies. So, I would like to share about those projects. One of the project was related to workflow building, which helps client to get different kind of chatbots as per their requirements. So the project was basically having a UI that people can simply drag and drop the elements based on the requirement and create a unique chatbot features. After that, I was working on other projects that was related to the company's websites and company's itself products and other client projects too.
So it
So
was
yeah.
mostly like a tooling thing, which was the front end was built on Angular, as well as their entire websites were built on Angular, right?
Yes, entire websites were also built on Angular, and the platform, the workflow that they used, that was also completely built on Angular.
So, which version of Angular it was, Khushi, and maybe the versions of Angular you worked with before Binapani?
Yes, before Binapani, I also have experience with Angular 15 as well as 16, 17, and 18. So, yeah, I have also worked with a company that used to upgrade their Angular version of their project each time a new version is getting launched in the market. So, yeah, I have those experience too.
Right. Maybe before 1 year into Binapani. After my college days, uh, I joined Bosch and I wanted to work with embedded stuff and but the project requirement was mostly into Angular stuff and I had to build toolings and IoT related softwares, which definitely needed a front end or a GUI interface. And that time, building it through a framework was better than doing it in plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? So that time Angular was into huge hype and React and other frameworks was not popular, right? I think Vue did not exist back then. So initially when I
Yes.
started, it was called AngularJS. I think AngularJS had two versions after which they shifted to Angular 1 and Angular 2 was more stable. It was mostly into TypeScript. I think earlier versions of Angular also supported writing it in JavaScript. I think it still does while you are making a new file, but I think preferred way of doing it is the logic goes into a TypeScript file. So yeah, from those days we have come a long way, right? Binapani uses Angular 15 framework, and we have the latest version. I think Angular 20 or 21 is the latest one. So yeah, mostly tinkering with Angular JS in my early days, and from there I have come a long way into Angular 15, Angular 20 now. I think Angular 18 was also extremely popular after this Zone.js was mitigated in Angular 16 or 17 probably. So Angular as a library also came a long way, and Google made a lot of changes, which is not always backward compatible. Maybe we'll get to that sooner when we discuss about library. But speaking of Angular libraries, Khushi, I also saw you worked a lot with Angular libraries before as well. Maybe you share some experience working with Angular libraries or building Angular libraries for the community.
Yes, sure. I also had worked on building different libraries, different components, but that was actually a private and internal thing of my previous company. So we used to have published this in our Azure so that we can reuse the different components in our whole project anywhere. So
Okay, so internal Angular libraries are really interesting because while I was publishing in NPM, they have it for enterprise plan. You can have your own private repos and stuff. But if you are self-hosting it or putting it in some other cloud like Azure or yeah, some other place you put maybe Bitbucket and Azure DevOps also offers the same. So if you are putting it there, how do you integrate that with an Angular library? Do you put a link to that in the package JSON, or how is the practice?
uh, link in the sense they have one npmrc file where we provide the registry and link in that if we want to provide authentication or not. So those things are mentioned in the npmrc file, and once that is published, we can use it simply just like we use an npm library. We use this npm install command, and that library automatically gets injected to our node modules.
Right. Maybe for the viewers, I'll little bit explain this part, and Kushi, please correct me if I'm wrong. So usually when you are installing something in any Angular project or any Node.js or any JavaScript related project, there's a concept of package.json where all the dependencies are mentioned, and npm is a package manager, node package manager, right? So it takes care
Yes.
of dependency installation, managing dependencies, building your library or building your entire application, launching it, and scripting. It does lot of things, right? Like we had Maven and Gradle in Java, or Python people might relate with Poetry, Pip, and there's more, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so npm is the same for the JavaScript or the Node world, and yeah, Angular, React. These are all kind of a JavaScript framework only. So this entire code base usually pulls it from npm.js, which is the npm registry or node registry, where all the libraries and dependencies are listed, which is publicly available, or if you are enterprise customer, it's privately available, right? And it pulls it from there. But if you want to override it and change the head and tell it that don't look at the npm registry, look into my personal stuff or any enterprise or any internal private stuff, so you can override that in an npr. What was the full form? I keep forgetting that.
npmrc file.
Exactly, npmrc file, where you can say that this is the link. Instead of fetching from npm, fetch it from this particular link. And if there is any proxy, which is always there in corporate use cases, right? So you can define your
Yes.
proxies, passwords, and everything into that, so that it
Yes.
goes through a proper authentication system and pulls the files from there. So most of the corporates and enterprise people have their private repositories maintained there, and it can be pulled in. So yeah, correct me, Khushi, if I'm wrong, but this was my understanding also about NPM.
It's correct.
Okay, so we spoke a lot about that. Let's talk a little bit about Angular as a framework itself. before we delve into the library part. So Angular is developed by Google and it has come a long way, right? Since its inception, it has matured a lot, and I think Angular 14, 15, even Angular 13, Angular 13, 14, 15, 16, you would see a lot of usage. Most of the corporates are old apps you go, it still uses probably Angular 15 or 16. It was one of the stable most version, and they used something called Zone.js, which is like a context management, or the execution context in JavaScript terms, which takes care of your memory management and stuff. So anything synchronous you do is handled by the framework itself. But if you make a async call, right, it goes away from the main thread, and someone should observe that when the task is getting completed. It can be a HTTP request, it can be a lot of things, it can be a promise, async await, all those coding scenarios, if anyone can relate. So those cases, there should be a watchers who should wait for that task or process to end, and maybe you make a fetch call to an HTTP. So when that request comes back, or the ends, you get some data, and you might have to manipulate the DOM or the front end part, right? So while doing so, Zone.js is like a silent library sitting behind and handling all this kind of use cases. So yeah, that's all I understand. But personally, I never interacted with Zone.js, and I think none of the developers do. It's like a silent tool always hiding behind. Yeah, along with Zone.js, we also have this famous library RxJS, which takes
Yes.
care of most of the cases. Maybe you touch upon that, Khushi, a little bit.
Yes, so talking about RxJS, I have used it a lot in my past projects, and I think everyone here must have used RxJS at different points of time in their projects. For data sharing, we can say it is a really useful thing to share the data between one to one component or one to multiple components. So yeah, we can use this observables and subjects, behavior subjects. So it's a really helpful tool for data sharing.
Right. So speaking of RxJS, right? Most use cases are like sharing data between multiple components, right? So Angular is a language that has this two-way binding, and any data declared in your TypeScript file is readily available to the HTML. But what do you do when you have to transfer or share data between components or pages? So you can have a parent-child relation, and through props or propagation, you can share through the data to the child component. But when your components are sitting far ahead, or you have like shared components or shared services, RxJS comes in handy. It has, as you mentioned, behavior subjects, observables.
Yes.
Someone can subscribe. Someone can, to some data stream. They can pipe in the data. They can, what is that called, like sharing the data is called streaming. Yeah, we have streams also, streaming, and there's a lot of things that goes on. RxJS is a topic in itself, and that would take the whole day. Maybe we can have a separate discussion on that. But where I was getting at was Angular 16 onwards. I think Angular 17 on, Angular decided to bring in something new called signals. And it's an optional, I think Angular 17 onwards, people can still use the old Zone.js method, or they can have signals. I think this was heavily inspired by React.js also, because React works with reactive hooks and React hooks, where uh, maybe you better touch upon this topic, and maybe a little bit of your experience working with signals, Khushi.
Yes, signals are a very optimized way to share the data. So what it does, it sends a signal to another component that identifies this thing within a fraction of second. So we can say it helps in performance optimization, as well as it is really very faster than the other traditional methods.
Right. Speaking of faster, I was just looking it up before our meeting. That is the older method, like the Zone.js way of handling data, is that faster, or signals are the new thing and they are much better? But from my research and going through multiple blogs, what I understood, for a small app or a medium app, I think they do fare well. The performance difference is not much. But if you are working with a big application, extremely complex with multiple components and data streams going here and there, signals might be better if written correctly, because yeah, signal is a bare metal way. I think the kind of way C or C++ handles the bits, or data itself. What am I saying? Yeah, maybe like C or C++ handles the pointers, right? So just like in C++, you have pointers who can do the memory management. Similarly, I think signals is a way you handle your asynchronous calls, or any asynchronous activities that goes in your app. So as a developer, you have to handle that well. Otherwise, there can be data leakage and a lot of issues, right? So I think better is just go with the Zone.js way, and if you have to have a extremely optimized application, a complex app, I think Signals is the way to go. But both written well, I think the difference is not much, but Signals definitely wins, right? Because you can individually handle the calls. Okay, so we spoke a lot about Angular, and yeah, definitely Signals is the not the only thing, right? While writing our library, we saw that there are so many challenges and issues. Let's take a look at the library we developed. Along with our library, we built a demo app to really visualize the same. So this was the library. This is the repo, which is open source now, and anyone can take a look and maybe contribute. Please do. Uh, yeah, so the usage is as simple as we have a single template or a single Angular component where you can pipe in your data and tell it or give it a format, and it would render accordingly in Angular. So why we built this? Maybe Khushi, you can touch upon a little bit.
So yes, after doing a lots of research on different libraries for rendering different kind of contents, uh, I faced some difficulties and it was getting really time consuming for me, as well as it would be for other developers. So we thought that we can find a unified way, a unified component that provides everything in a single go.
Right. And specifically talking of EdTech scenario, in education domain, teachers, students, everyone has to deal with a lot of data, right? There are so many EdTech companies and EdTech products out there. I'm not sure how they handle such a scenario, but yeah, you end up working with a lot of textual data, image related data. You have a lot of HTML that goes on, and specifically math itself is complicated. Maybe we'll touch upon a little bit later. But math itself is extremely complicated because from my research that I went through, and I have been dealing with this for months. Even before this library, there were a lot of other topics where I had to go through LaTeX and text. Seems like .tex files is something that you have to compile. It's a huge chunk of file that has table of content, TOC files. They have bibliographies, and there are other links, the research docs and stuff. So end of the day, you end up with a folder with multiple files, and there are local compilers that is used, which then consumes all these files and converts it into a PDF that is readable, or sometimes the full book, textbooks are written in pure LaTeX, and you just have to compile it. Until unless you do that, you can't work with it. And there is no web-based compiler that exists which is perfect. The closest we come is something called MathJax, or there are packages like KaTeX and other stuff. But that can only do some browser side rendering or interpretation. But still, if you are in your file, if you are importing external packages, like, but there are so many external libraries that are used maybe for diagrams, images, There's so much you can do in a book, right? And during our collaboration with SIUC, we had to deal with so many files as such, and it was extremely difficult, and we struggled for long to find libraries, and specifically when it comes to the Angular ecosystem, the support goes down even more. So we thought that why not write something? Maybe just show a little bit on this.
Uh, yes. So we have currently these different formats. We have this text, we have HTML, we have Markdown support, which again has the math support in it. We have this JSON format, and we have MathJax, as well as we have LaTeX support added in our library.
Right. Maybe we can go through one by one. So, to the viewers, this is just like a demo app. What you see to the left is the input data from any data pipeline. It can be your database, it can be a normal text file, or your locally coded some kind of a text. Uh, it can be coming through Databricks. I don't know, any sort of a data pipeline you can think of. And as I was saying, right, it's in Angular. After you install this particular library, you just have to use this particular template, right? And your data can be fed here, which is the content. And then yeah, format. As of now, we support. Currently, we support text, HTML, Markdown, LaTeX, MathJax, because there are a lot of Angular MathJax related libraries, but I found it a little bit weird. It supports some part of LaTeX, little bit of I think HTML it supports, which it shouldn't, but it does. So it's weird. So we thought that, and our Binapani portal was also built based on the MathJax library in the initial stages, right? So we wanted to keep a backward compatibility. So anyone migrating from MathJax will have the full support, and we have JSON as well as code which is still in progress, which would support the syntax highlighting of any code. LaTeX itself is again like there are two types of files, right? .tex, which they call it text files only, TEX, and then there is LaTeX. You can also search that. Yeah, you can find articles after articles, but they are not exactly same. So math wise, it's extremely complicated, and I think people did not come up with a unified library, uh, and which is also understandable because it itself is a complicated scenarios. So yeah, as of now we support all these formats. Maybe Khushi, which of the formats, and maybe a little bit research that we did, and what are the existing library that is out there, and how Omniview merges all of the libraries together into a single library.
Yes, so there are different libraries currently available in NPM. So for Markdown, there is also one library called Marked JS, or simply Marked maybe. So that library doesn't provide this support for MathJax, but this Markdown library also has support for MathJax, so you can add mathematical expressions in it, as shown here in this case.
Right.
So that's why I chose to use this NGX Markdown.
I think in Marked, or there were one more library, right? We were discussing. So they have to have a KaTeX, or there's another library for the math part, and the end user has to do a lot of shuffling and tweaking, right? To get that, they have to do some configuration. But I think
Yes,
here it works out of the box with the initial setup that is there. Maybe we are trying
yes,
to mitigate that completely so that it's as simple as npm install Omniview and it just works. Similarly, JSON format, or I'll go from the top. So text format is as simple as your entire raw text gets propagated without altering any spaces or line breaks or anything. Why do we have something as simple as this? Because imagine a context where your data is automatically coming, and it's you know client side rendering, or uh, the data pipeline is such. So the library also supports the raw text, so you can toggle the format and get the raw text if it is just in plain raw text. Similarly, if your data is like this, which is a HTML format, it would just render it properly. Similarly, if you have a JSON, which is again extremely popular format, right, for structured data, our library supports it in a nice interactive view way. And we thought of going through an external dependency for this, but most of the library we found for JSON, they have to have a, I mean, they supports a lot of things, right? They supports filtering, JSON manipulations, etc., etc. But we don't want that, right? And it unnecessarily makes the package bloated, and the bundle size increases. So we don't need that. So we just want to view the JSON, and I think this does a good enough job. We wrote this component from our own. So it would also give you a hint of how many props are inside this. So if you fold it out, and yeah, it supports everything like string, numbers, fractions, boolean values, nullable values, and objects of objects and list of objects, and all the like everything can be viewed. And it would just give you a hint also, right? There are two props inside this. Similarly, if I expand this array, see the array is also viewed. And interesting thing is, like, imagine there's a single prop here. It would say prop, not the plural props. So tiny things we take for granted, but like we understand also how other libraries were written. Even these tiny details and everything, people took care. So while we wrote it, we can appreciate also what goes on behind building such a library.
Yes, for MathJax format also we did a lot of research and things, but at the end we came upon this MathJax Angular library for dependency because it provides a good MathJax support, and in other libraries we faced some issues that a few things were not supported and it was not rendering properly. So yes, we decided to take this MathJax Angular as our dependency.
Yeah, this guy. Yeah, I think it was this guy. There were so many issues. Even I tried to raise peers last time, but it got rejected multiple times. So yeah, they have version compatibility related stuff, and they try to keep it up to date with the latest Angular. But we had Angular 15, right? So there should be support for that. So yeah, yeah. Maybe MathJax is also a little bit weird how specifically how the Angular libraries are. So if you have some HTML or some other format, it also renders that. Whereas some LaTeX, pure LaTeX syntax, it again doesn't support. So it's extremely complicated. Yeah. Speaking of that, maybe I'll move to the LaTeX format. So as I was saying, right? LaTeX format itself is very complicated because you have to have a local file system where there are a lot of files, right? This table of content, bibliography, and there's so many files, and you have to compile it, and it gets compiled and converted to a PDF or a book or any readable format. But for a browser end, writing such a compiler, it doesn't exist. The closest we have is MathJax only. So if you see here, this is like a document only, and most of the libraries doesn't support this use package, for example async math and all. So these are not supported. But if you see here to the right, it nicely gets rendered. It almost looks like a PDF. But for the browser end, this is still, I think, an unsolved problem. And yeah, it's extremely glitchy, and there's a lot of issues. Doesn't have a full-fledged format support. Specifically, there are two formats, right? .tex and LaTeX, which I was just discussing few back. Yeah, so that's all the support for the formats we have for now. Uh, yeah, we also have a try yourself like a playground. You can literally copy something. Kushi, you can also share some. formats we were
Yes.
working or data sources we were working with. So say if it is MathJax, see this is a LaTeX, right? Your MathJax should support that, but it doesn't. It says unknown. It doesn't even understand what the document is. So that's why we have a full-fledged LaTeX support here, which can render most of the content that you see in any LaTeX document, and it would give you a nice rendered view. And for all our components, we try to keep it with minimal style or no styles at all, so that the parent div of this particular template would take over. Um,
Also, I would like to add something here that the latex library that we have used currently, we did a lot of research, but we didn't find anything that renders latex in Angular. So currently, the content that you are seeing is a pure JavaScript-based library that we have used, and there is nothing available which is built on Angular.
exactly. We had to come up with kind of a wrapper. I think there are few errors also. We had to go through a lot of fixes here. But yeah, working towards making this library more stable. And yeah, contributions are welcomed. So if anyone wants, just pitch in, because this is a extremely important section, specifically education, or even anywhere you see you are reading something end of the day, right? So if math is not supported well, specifically in Angular ecosystem, that's a problem. So yeah, contributions are welcome. Khushi, maybe we go ahead with the code overview a little bit. Angular is a framework that supports structure. So we try to keep the entire library in such a way so that it's well structured and yeah, it's easy to go through. So this is the repo. Let's maybe go through it, Khushi.
Yes. So this is our NGX Omniview library. Uh, First, let me take a look at the structure. We are using version 15 compatibility, so we have this modular structure. Yes. We have this library folder. Inside it, we have this modular structure that is one module file, NGX Omniview module, that wraps up the main component, that is NGX Omniview component. And we also have a different JSON viewer component, which you guys already saw. So yeah, this one, and we have one renderers folder where we have each and every separate file for whatever content we render. For example, we have JSON renderer for separate file for JSON renderer thing. We have latex, we have Markdown, MathJax, so that it becomes easy to maintain the things, and also people can understand it well, and contribution can also be easier.
Right. People can also work in parallel to different renderers, and
Yes.
in this level also we have a nice readme for anyone who wants to contribute. So these three are the central registries. So we have this renderer registry where all the implementation of the renderers are registered, and we have the type declaration also for that. So yeah, this is where all the renderers get imported, and yeah, to have uh, a central place where all the ones are exported out, and there's also the type declarations here. So we support this formats only. So yeah, other than this, if anyone by mistake gives a string in the format that is not supported, then yeah, we don't support that. And this itself is the entire package. I'm not going into individual renderers here. That's not needed. But if you come out, this is what's getting consumed into the main component of NGX Omniview library. And yeah, let's not do a deep dive of the code here. But yeah, anyone interested can just take a look. So,
So
hmm,
we can mention that the number of downloads we have within a week
yeah, we just
as an achievement.
Exactly. So we just launched it, and I think we saw 77 downloads overnight, and the number is
Yes.
just spiking up, which is interesting actually. Yeah, currently, yeah, in fact, let's talk about the pain points. So initially, we were trying to have the full support for Angular 15 to Angular 20, but we stumbled upon lot of issues with the same. So currently, we are trying to make it stable for Angular 15, and then we'll come up with some strategy, right? Maybe Khushi, you start like share some of the issues you faced having it full compatibility spectrum from 15 to 20, and maybe I'll also share a few struggles that went behind.
Yes. So initially we were planning to launch this library as a support for version 15 to 20, but we were facing lots of challenges related to the dependencies, we can say. So after the Angular version 16, the 17 and all versions provide different functionalities, and due to that, the Angular core and common libraries, uh, those dependencies were getting a lot of conflicts, and we didn't want that our users or developers face these issues while installing and using our library. So that's why currently we decided that we will only launch a single version, that is version 15, and later on we can upgrade them.
Right. In fact, like syntax wise, I was saying, so we were developing in Angular 17 or 18 environment probably, right? And we are trying to build something for Angular 15. So our IDE
Yes,
did not complain a lot when we use syntax, right? Like at the rate, if else, and there are a lot of new syntaxes that Angular has currently. And then we
yes,
pushed the code, and when we were trying to install it for Angular 15, Angular 15 doesn't understand that syntax, right? So the entire
yes,
code base went down with a lot of errors and everything. So we had to again use the older versions of or the syntax. But for doing so, the TypeScript file also has to import Angular commons, right? So Angular bundles their package into multiple small components, and the core component which you would see right from at the rate Angular slash core and all those cases. So
yes.
there's a commons modules.
I think in Angular 15 the standalone thing was already launched, but it didn't have a stable support, we can say. A stable support for standalone came just after the version 17 and 17 onwards. So at that time, there was no standalone such support, and we were using a modular structure in our project that was causing lots of conflicts.
Right. I mean, we have seen this code so many times. So in case someone is installing this particular library, say, uh, most of the Angular 15, 16 till that you would see the libraries export modules. I think only after Angular 17 or beyond, it supports single standalone components. And I was reading a little bit about it. So with a single standalone component, you come with all the dependency bundles and everything. You do npm install ngx Omniview, and this particular module you have to uh, install it here within the imports in your app.modules.ts file. And once you do that, the entire template is available throughout your code base. You can just write uh, Omniview and then use the particular thing in your HTML files. But I think we should also have the single standalone component support for the versions, right, 17 onwards, because it's really handy. You did not do this kind of initial setup, right? You can just import it to any particular component and just put it in a single component. Yeah, that's something maybe we'll look into it and have. The aim is definitely to have full support for all the Angular versions. But maybe having support for all the Angular versions is something challenging, and we are still looking up how to do that. There were various strategies Khushi were mentioning, right? There were some libraries who do that through different branches, and they have a release cycle where the major version is actually pointing to the Angular's version. Maybe you can share some of your learnings there.
Yes, I saw a few libraries that were doing the same thing. They were releasing different versions. Also, they provided this command that if you use this command npm install some library at the rate 15, then it will get downloaded for 15th Angular support. Similarly, they have for 16, 17, and 20, and so on. So when I checked their code base, I found out that they have a different branching thing. The major version they are using for branching their for naming their different branches, and based on that sub branches they merge it down in the main branch, and this way they publish the things so that whenever a user provides at the rate some version, it automatically gets downloaded for that Angular version only.
Right. I would also like to touch upon this peer dependencies thing. Uh, Ideally, our library supports text HTML, which is just using inner HTML, Angular inner HTML, and the JSON, which is like inbuilt to the library. And for rest of the cases, we are having the peer dependencies like KaTeX, MathJax, Angular, and NGX Markdown. Right? I mean, it did not make sense to write a full MathJax or a KaTeX engine from scratch. It doesn't make sense. But how we have done it is we have a peer dependency here instead of a hard-coded dependency. So imagine in your project use case, you don't have to use MathJax at all. So why would you install that? So best advice is have the peer dependencies installed because your project might already be using this kind of libraries, right? So in that case, so that there is no version mismatch. Again, this entire thing was a hill, right? And like personally, I got to learn a lot from this experience. So our library supports this range of versions. It's also available in the npm page right here. So yeah, KaTeX, if you have this wide range of your KaTeX dependencies within this range, or MathJax Angular is within this range, and so on and so forth, it would work readily with NGX Omniview because it would use whatever is already installed rather than trying to install again. So, Khushi, what I was saying was extremely interesting. Imagine you have a huge code base which has say KaTeX dependency of 0.16.0 already. And for our library, if it was a dependency for KaTeX with certain version, it would try to install another KaTeX version of the same. And then there are a lot of conflicts that can happen in a code base. So to mitigate all those kind of issues, it's better to keep it as a peer dependency and let the peer or the host project maintain this dependencies, let them download these packages, and after that, if they install NGX Omniview, it would work on top of it. It would integrate those libraries, and it is coded in such a way that it is meant to work. But best is if we also have our own implementation so that we get rid of the dependency on third-party libraries. But I think for LaTeX and KaTeX, I think LaTeX we are handling as you mentioned, right? It's a JavaScript library. So currently through a CDN approach, we are pulling in that library and wrapping it around a Angular wrapper. But yeah, I think we just started and the library can mature a lot with time and helps the community. That's that's more important.
Yes, we are continuously working on the improvements and enhancing this functionalities, we can say, and also increase the compatibility for different Angular versions.
Right. Okay, I think that's all. But Khushi, would you like to share how the experience was? I think we pulled it off in a week into development, and we published this particular library and open sourced it out. So, how was your experience or developer experience so far working with this particular project?
So Yes, I had a basic experience in developing and publishing these libraries in my past, but this one was challenging actually because of the support that we were trying to provide to different Angular versions. So initially, it felt a little bit challenging, as well as it was interesting also that I was developing something and contributing it to the community. So yes, definitely, it was really interesting.
Personally, testing for me was a nightmare, like honestly speaking, because my system has a node version. So when you are working with Angular, you have a node version, Angular version, and then your system and then OS dependencies. So it's a nightmare. So how can I test for Angular 15, 16, 17? Like individually I had to do all. So I pulled out this sandbox, which gives you an environment. Best is to spin up a VM, but we did not have that, right? So I was trying to install it in Code Sandbox. There are a lot of sandboxes available, right? This tag blitz is also there, but it was not friendly for me at least. So yeah, I pulled in and I was trying to install it. I got into their terminal and they already come up with a Angular built-in, right? So I removed the entire directory structure, cleaned it off, installed the node versions, different node versions, and I was following a matrix actually. So node version in one, and then the Angular versions, and then trying to install. So for this node version, what are the Angular versions possible? So like that, I was following a grid pattern, and it was a nightmare. It took days and days, but and lot of errors, seeing lot of red. But yeah, finally we have something stable, and uh, it was awesome actually, because when finally things work and clicks into place, it's a good vibe. So it was challenging as you mentioned, but even personally for me, it was extremely enjoyable. So yeah, let's keep working on this library and make it more matured. And anyone wanting to contribute, please feel free to raise a PR, open up an issue, and anything more you would like to add on to.
Yeah, sure. I would like to thank everyone for bearing with us and listening to all the things that we have developed, uh, especially this Omniview library. So yeah, keep contributing.
Yeah, maybe we can have a follow up on this. We can talk a little bit about the academy platform. This is already uh, into integration. Khushi is integrating this library now with our Binapani platform. Maybe we can talk a lot about that in upcoming episode. So yeah, thanks all for watching.